So, okay, I think we can start now. You're all very welcome to this third and last plenary session at this conference the session is called Education, a Game Changer for Sustainable Development, ? I am Eva Friman, since November 1st, the director of Swedest, the Swedish International Center of Education for Sustainable Development, which since some time now is part of a larger SD and ESD environment at Uppsala University in Sweden, encompassing also a larger ESD research group, a research institute with international connotations at the Department of Education, and we also have the student-led and PhD student-led education on ESD and research schools. And I'm also a proud member of the Swedish delegation here at the conference. It's a great honor for me to have been asked to moderate this session. I wasn't meant to really. I'm here instead of Victoria Toresson, who has a cold and therefore, of course, only temporarily has lost her voice. I will do my very best to replace her, but please bear with me if I... Yeah. And you're almost welcome, and of course, especially welcome to all of our panelists. First of all, we have Hinako Takahashi, the Parliamentary Vice Minister at the Ministry of Environment in Japan. Welcome. And then we have Rosa Otunbayeva, the former president of Kyrgyzstan and the president of the Rosa Otunbayeva Initiative International Public Foundation. Welcome. And Hans van Ginkel, the pioneer of the movement of the RCE's Regional Centers of Expertise on ESD, and who was also the Under-Secretary General of the United Nations and Rector of the United Nations University in Tokyo from 1997 to 2007. Welcome, Hans. And last but not least, Arab Obala, the chief of the Sustainable Consumption and Production Branch at the Division of Technology, Industry and Economics of the United Nations Environment Program, UNEP. Welcome. Okay, so the discussion we will have this morning, and to which you will be invited in a while, will contribute to the third objective of this conference, namely accelerating action for sustainable development. How are sustainability challenges addressed through ESD? And in the concept note for this session, it says, achieving sustainable development requires fundamental changes in mindsets that results in changes of actions. And that is true, though, of course, mind you, changes in mindsets does not necessarily, of course, result in changed action. It continues, sustainable development cannot be achieved by technological solutions, political regulations, or financial instruments alone. But ESD can help bring about such change. And here today we will investigate the role of ESD for transforming societies and as a catalyst for cross-sectorial planning and implementation of programs in various areas, climate change, biodiversity, disaster risk reduction, and more. And the session should also address how ESD can help move sustainable development policy in action forward to meet global, regional, national, and local needs. And in focus for the session is the role of ESD in addressing global challenges. And my first question to the panel is therefore, how can education address global challenges such as the ones just mentioned, climate change, disaster risk reduction, biodiversity, and why not also overconsumption and lacking access to consumption? Keeping in mind also that a majority of those with the largest footprint are educated. So education does not automatically address these issues, at least not in a very sustainable way. Is the problem maybe that we are not trained in ESD? And we will start with Hinako, please.
Good morning. 高橋ひな子と申します。よろしくお願いいたします。私は まず最初に日本が提案いたしましたこの ESD に対しましてたくさんの国々から
Thank you very much. My name is Hinako Takahashi. Very nice to meet you all. I would like to first of all express my heartfelt appreciation, my deepest gratitude to all of you, participants, organizers, and everybody from all countries all over the world. And with this appreciation, for your support for ESD that Japan has been leading, and I'd like to try to address the question number one. Those global scale challenges such as climate change and disaster risk reduction and biodiversity and sustainable consumption, these are not away from our daily life. They are part of our day-to-day life. For instance, we should turn off our lights when we don't need to have light. We have to switch off electricity. And increasing number of people are doing that just automatically as part of their natural gestures in daily lives, because they think, what if there is no electricity, what would be our lives? So they think that it's very important to link their own day-to-day life behaviors as well as the environment as a whole. I think the power of education is the power which let people become aware of this. And I think what is important is that everybody takes similar initiatives, even one initiative, but by large number of people. And through ESD, I would like to achieve a situation where not a minority do many things, but many people do even little things, but each of them, one by one, on individual basis. I would like to achieve such a society. I had an opportunity to visit Germany as part of my missions regarding ESD, and I saw that the ESD was so advanced in Germany that, and being based on a long-term view, so the children are really integrating in Germany ESD ideas early on, and they will become adults 2 decades later. They will be children, and in order to foster future generations who will be supporting ESD. In Japan, my ministry, Ministry of Environment, has been strongly focusing on capacity building, being based on local characteristics in program of environmental education, not only education institutions as such, but NPO, NGO, businesses, civil society, organizations at local level have been all interconnected in these initiatives. So it is not only in classrooms, not only in schools, but also in communities, businesses, households, families. ESD viewpoint should be integrated in environmental education practice. I think with this we will be able to have a great contribution to the conservation of environment on global basis. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I give the word to Rosa, please.
Good morning, everybody. 21st century, by the initiative of Japan, has started with the ESD and will last the rest of 90 years. On this lonely and only planet inhabited by humans, we are going to be as one family in a big village by the name Earth. We are laying here fundament for the new set of mind, new world. Nagoya Conference has wrapped up the first decade of ESD, and today will be announced the Global Action Program on ACD, World Guideline for the next decade, Aichi-Nagoya Declaration on ESD. And there is no doubt that education is a game changer. Thanks to Japan and UNESCO, educationalists from all over the world came and gathered here in Nagoya. People of this field are not spoiled, nor by their government's own government, nor either by internationals. 6% of budget for education, is it enough? We were listening the first days about the needs for education, and when we have not changed our textbooks, epochs are changed, systems of governance change, but children are learning on the same textbooks. In a world struggling for continued consequences of protracted economic crisis, less and less money given to education. Governments hardly meeting ends and pushing very hard for economic recovery. All last decades, university business education been overwhelmed with the teaching business subjects. Making money, profit, this is trendy, this is the fashion, this is the main course of education. Environment, ethics, they are orphanages in developing worlds. Poverty reduction, visibly growing political tensions between countries and regions, avert people's minds from sustainability and development. We should notice and appreciate the absence of a number of delegations who couldn't come to Nagoya and join to this conference because of set of those troubles and problems. Education starts now very early. Famous book of Masaru Ibuka, After 3 is Too Late, is very popular in our part of the world. We are convinced that early child education should be one of the red line action program of the United Nations beyond 2015. And I want to commit, I was yesterday with the youth session, that on behalf of the Madrid Club, 100 former government leaders of the governments and the heads of the states are under umbrella of this club from 60 countries. For sure, I'll work to spread this information that youth also should be part of main decision making in this century. Education is lifelong exercise, certainly, and we had a quite an interesting discussion yesterday in a section of the future of ESD in this century. Lifelong education was shown clearly by Betrut College when our grandmothers involved in solution of everyday sharp problems. We will leave this conference with the belief that in all countries, girls will be taught alongside of the boys. No girls will be shot as Malala. No girls will be kidnapped as it does Boko Haram groups. And I wish that every office of the UNESCO in every corner of the world will launch such conferences to launch action plan on ESD. Couple of small things. Education for sustainable development will embrace the mind of children, teachers, parents, not only on the rational base. Heart should be included. I hope that it should be supported, I believe that it should be supported emotionally, spiritually. There is a little knowledge without art and ethics values. I want to congratulate our Japanese friends with the second Oscar award for Hayao Miyazaki. And his Totoro became long ago our children's neighbor. And Miyazaki himself is, no doubt, the best ambassador for ESD. He was a petrel of education for sustainable development. As human beings, we are growing in numbers up to 9 billion very soon on our planet, whereas there are less and less animals, birds, fishes. Some of them are very rare species and counts by 100 heads. No pledges of states, of governments and states, no heads of states and governments saved them from killing so far. No hate tribunal is set up for such purposes. We should unite together under the umbrella of ECD to save lives of those our partners on the planet. Actions like save pandas, tigers, snow leopards, elephants, building bioreservations, zoos, museums of nature. In the developing world, we should also have museums which play such an important, crucial role in education.
Thank you so much, Rosa. I will come back to some of your issues later. Then I give the floor to Hans, please.
Thank you very much, Pam. Ladies and gentlemen, first I would like to thank UNESCO and Japan for organizing this meeting. I believe it's very important to regularly take stock and look forward. So the German government did so 5 years ago. Now we do it again. And we are looking forward to the implementation of the Global Action Program. And the RCEs, as well as the higher education world, have committed themselves in the previous days in the events leading up to this meeting to really start to contribute. So the question is, game changer. And I was really triggered by this word game changer, and I was playing with it. Is education changing? Or is sustainable development changing? Or are both changing? Where are we changing? And a game changer is someone who fundamentally changes the events, the situation. And indeed, education to one side has to bring to next generations and to spread, to communicate what we know. But when we really want to change things, we also have to go into areas we don't know, into fields of knowledge we don't know, into ways to educate we did not experiment yet. And so therefore, we really have to think about this game changer. And I believe that it is very important to think about new knowledge, new insights, new ideas, both with regard to education as well as with regard to sustainable development. And there it's nice that since Johannesburg we have this link between all levels of education, primary, secondary, higher education, vocational, formal, informal, non-formal. And then you have to think about the fact that maybe when we look back, we have learned more outside the school than inside the school. Not meaning that the school is unimportant, because the school gives structure to what we learn later. But at the same time, we have to instill in people the urge to look further, to learn more, to do more. And universities and higher education institutions in general have a task also to develop regularly new knowledge. But new knowledge is not just coming from that type of institutions. New knowledge also comes from common sense, from knowing very well local and regional conditions, by looking around well, have contact with different stakeholders who have different perspectives on the reality. And that's why in the regional centers of expertise we have tried to bring together all these stakeholders. And we have to think about what happens in the school, what could happen outside the school. And in particular, when in a country like Japan, we think about risk reduction in disasters, we have to think about how people all around can be informed and can learn from previous occasions, from previous events. And too often in our world, we refer to kind of technological solutions. I still remember when in Kobe we had the World Disaster Reduction Conference, we published a book, No Risk to No Risk. Not no N-O, but no K-N-O-W. We have a strange society. In a way, we don't the government to be too much involved. But on the other hand, we always blame the government when something occurs and people die because of the events. And so we hold the government responsible for things that at other moments we don't want them to be responsible for. It's very strange in our society. So to know risk, that's where education comes in. And that's not just in schools, that's in all different types of learning situations where we have to prepare people for. And all people are responsible, no one excluded. We should not think we are the teachers and they are the learners. We are the teachers and the learners, all of us, at the same time. And that's often forgotten. That's a different style of guiding. Like Bernardo said yesterday, he doesn't want us to tell him what to do, but he wants us to help, to guide. And the youth representative the day before said, there is a tendency among the older generation to say, we made a mess of all of it, so now we leave it to you, and you have to find the solutions. And the youth representative said, no, no, no. You don't get off the hook. You are also responsible. We have to do it together. And I think these are strong messages coming from this conference. And when we want to address climate change and all the other topics mentioned, then we have really to look at different ways to approach this type of issues in science, in the social sciences, in the humanities. They have really to work together, but they have also to bridge to society. And institutions should not say, oh, this is our institutional task, and beyond that, we have no responsibility for society. We have, in every occasion, responsibility for society. And that is why we have tried to bring the regional centers of expertise not only as institutions where we are trying to find out new strategies for education. But we also would like to put words into action. And for instance, in the RCE in Yogyakarta, they have a kind of rule that all the students in the different institutions also have to go into society and are being involved into real projects. So they learn in a project. We have to bring theory and practice together. I believe there's still a lot of work to be done, but we can only do it together. Thank you.
Very well said, Hans. Thank you very much. Yes, there were also issues in what you said that we will get back to. And please, Arab.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you to Japan, Nagoya, and UNESCO for inviting us. Happy to be with UNESCO, our sister agency, which will coordinate many activities together. Game changer, I have been also thinking about it, but from a different angle. When I see the kids today and I look at my children, how they handle the new software, how they handle the new equipment, how they handle the computers and telephones and games without looking at the guidelines, inventing things, moving further, I'm impressed because it takes me weeks and headaches to be able to do 10% of what they do. But at the same time, when you discuss with them about another game field, which is the world, which is the society, then you get to completely another type of positioning, how they see it, and you see that they are completely lost, simply because they don't have the knowledge required to confront that. But at the same time, they have the capacity to get into new technology and to master it in a way that we cannot do it. If we want effectively to really change things, we need to combine both. This capacity of the youth in understanding new technology is working with them. And I would say the capacity that others have in understanding the word, in making it the game and trying to see further. Explaining to the people and integrating in the curricula that if you are playing with the world, these are the rules of game, otherwise there will be no world, otherwise there will be no game after that. So education for that is one of the most powerful tools we can have at hand. But not only, and whenever we talk about education, and this has been, I would say, mainly the focus here, we talk about people at school, whatever the age, from 3 to 25, but education should also concern decision makers and policy makers. And we have seen it through all our work on sustainable consumption and production, which for me, of course, I'm preaching for what I'm doing, is the essential pathway to sustainable development. But many people, many decision makers today do not understand how to deal with sustainable consumption and production, how to integrate them in a systemic and prospective approach. And we had regularly, and sorry if I use the word, for diplomats in many agencies, to educate them regularly in order to understand the interactions, the conflicts, the challenges, and the opportunities that are behind this. And that's what we have to do also in the education system. Ensure that the learners are positioning themselves as an actor in the society, not just doing one thing, but they are part of a system, and they are reinventing it in certain areas of the world when they call it in communities. What they are doing, for example, in Singapore and China, when they talk about livable communities, bringing back the people as if they were in a village to feel responsible of what they have around them. We can talk about later about this issue of electricity, water, and so on. Hope we'll have time to give some example. But the education system today, from when I have done it many decades ago and what I have seen today, is that we have lost slowly and slowly the notion of being a citizen to being an individual. And the education system has a huge responsibility in that. We are less and less citizens when we leave school and university. We are individuals, specialized, working in silos, and not understanding the interaction of different elements of the system. And here we have many, not challenges, but if we can really open the box, put the things right on the table and try to understand the different interactions and show to the people who are being educators, but also to the educators themselves, to understand properly the framework in which we are working, and that there are really opportunities for each one of us to become a responsible citizen. The education system is not very well framed to that end. And from experience, I have seen it. I have been invited to go to business schools from where we have the best leaders getting out. And when presenting to them another perspective, I was surprised to see master degree and PhD reacting to their teachers and telling them, why you don't give us this picture in order to better position ourselves. In 2 decades, we will have 2 to 3 billion middle-class additional consumers. These are the ones who will be leading the world in the way they consume, in the way they are responsible consumers. They are educated today. If they do it business as usual, we are going to hell. We don't have the resources. We have to make sure that we do change, that we become a real game changer to save our planet. Responsible consumption is essential. Many countries are really working closely on that. And we have done it with specific cases in Tanzania, in Chile, in Indonesia, not only in developed countries. When we talk about sustainable consumption, many people turn immediately to the wealthy. Yes, they have a responsibility to take action and to lead by example. But the poor also can work on responsible consumption to better use the minimum resources they have. And the education system is very good. And I end up with that. If you go in villages today, the teaching at villages level is still in a community, and people do understand the value of what they have around them. When they get in a city, they are individuals, not citizens.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes. We will move on to the next question because much time has passed by. Please be a little bit shorter in your next answer. The second question is, how do you see education reflected in the current debate on the development of the Sustainable Development Goals? And then keeping in mind also that these are to be useful for pursuing focused and coherent action on sustainable development and everybody's action, and whether almost all of you have been touching on that there are obstacles of political, economic, and gender, maybe nature. And if so, how can education actually bring us beyond these obstacles? And we start with Rosa, please.
Education is base and tool to build society with tolerance, with deep understanding of others, not only yours. And I would say that the world is not ready today because we have so many sharp flashes of extremism, radicalism, all sorts of such consequences of our today's development. I'm talking about the 400 million migrants. This is the fourth by number population on the earth. And I do believe that in every country should be education should help our children to be tolerant, to understand others, to believe that this might be a temporary situation. I've been to Tenement Museum in New York, and I have seen that how America was assembled and how it became one united country of Italian, Irish, and German. Everyone was coming there, and society has worked together to incorporate all of them. So today's world, I would say, is much more challenging. I would agree with you that, yes, there are now young people less citizens in some way and more individuals, but at the same time, young people, they face such a tremendous challenges. We globalized, we penetrated to other countries, we should accept others' existence, and I think a developed world should be keen to all those troubles of economical crisis and political crisis which world faces now. And I understand the education is hardly coping with all those problems. And I don't think that political sciences such a science about the societies, they reflect well all these troubles of 21st century. And they are getting even more tense. And forecasts, they say that we are facing not just economical problems, but going back to the Cold War, for example. So, and it means that really challenges are ahead still.
Yes, but Rosa, how do you see the education connected to Sustainable Development Goals? Could you talk a little bit more about that, please? Education, is that focused in the context where you have been part of discussing new sustainable development goals?
Sure, I do believe that without education you can't move on, and education is tool, education is base, education is fundament for everyone. Look, today the world is the whole world is in schools, and when we are talking that 40% of some countries are illiterate, it doesn't mean that there is no education. Education lasted throughout their life. Education is everywhere, at home, in the street, and in the schools, and we are coping with all these troubles of the current world. But I do believe that this ASD, it is really such an avenue and such a new concept. And I think we should go back and revise again. There are a number of countries, as clearly it was from this conference evidence, number of Arya-Guard countries, they really pushed very hard to implement this in schools, in education system, whereas I do believe that in a number of countries we do understand quite narrow, thinking only about the environmental problems, whereas we do believe that this is much broader concept, which includes social and political and economical consequence as well.
Yes, thank you, Rosa. And please, Hinako.
Thank you very much. I have been listening to my co-panelists' various comments. I wanted to touch upon one specific point. I am originally from one of the stricken areas who suffered from the great earthquake of the March 2011, and many people supported us, and I am so grateful for the help and support we received. And some speakers touched upon the Japanese experiences, and we need to learn from past experiences of disasters. Many coastal areas, which used to be a natural park, were devastated by tsunami, and currently my Ministry of Environment is trying to rebuild and redevelop those areas once again as parks where everybody can have walk and enjoy, so that we can learn in those newly developed natural parks on the coastal region of Tohoku everything about nature, environment, and the coexistence between human beings and the environment. Japan has overcome many suffering ever since the end of the Second World War, and also disasters. Through these experiences, we would like to think seriously upon what are the right messages we have to convey toward the other countries. I think that is an important role of Japan. And now the MDGs target year is 2015, and as a succeeding series of development goals, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, are being obviously discussed in the framework of UN. Japan is obviously part of that. The objective number 4 of SDG is education. and that the objective should incorporate ESD. This is the proposal of Japanese government. Our government has been suggesting inclusion of ESD into the objective 4 of SDG education. I would like to ask everybody to support this proposal made to Japan. In SDGs, it is aimed at providing everybody with comprehensive, equitable, high-quality education throughout their life. We do believe that the ESD will contribute to further heighten the quality of education and to help the realization of sustainable development goals, and also to help change the behaviors of everybody. I think ESD is an indispensable, essential element of this objective of the SDG about education. I do believe that this is really critical for every children. I would like to have a cooperation from everybody. Thank you very much.
So their education is really reflected in the development of the SDGs. Very good. Thank you. Arab, please. On the reflection of education in the SDGs debate.
It happened that I have been collaborating very closely on the elaboration of the SDGs, and the way the process that has been taken in New York was very interesting in a sense that it was really, compared to the MDGs, much more interactive, much more open. And as the Vice Minister referred to it, goal number 4 is precisely on that. And there's a certain number of targets, but you have also education-related targets and the other goals. It's important to know them, which means that it's clearly understood that it is cross-cutting. It is not just an issue under one goal, but it can be reflected in other places. And we need to consider it seriously from this perspective. The sustainable consumption and production goal, if you look at it, is mostly about education, different type of education, awareness raising, providing information, enabling the people. So when you look at the whole SDGs, in fact, looking at from the lenses of education, awareness raising, capacity building, it's almost everywhere. So this means that it has been understood very clearly, I would say, by diplomats and capitals, that education is a cross-cutting issue. It's a powerful tool, and we have to work on it. However, what we need to do, because we will be starting from January, February, to work on further down on targets and on indicators. It's extremely important, and if we take also ESD and what will come from here, to make sure that in the education system and in the indicators that we'll be identifying, that we take into account that the world is evolving very quickly, and that the education system need to adapt to that. The way we are moving now with technology, the way we are moving now with our knowledge system, sometimes we see that the education system is still backward and not able to catch up. We didn't have this 100 years ago, 50 years ago, but what's happening now, 15 years, 10 years, 5 years, is so quick in the changes, and the education system is not adapting. So let us make sure all together that by analyzing the targets and working on the indicators, we do include the necessity to have an evolving system that adapts to the time, but also to the context. It's extremely important. Education is contextualized. If we do have common principles, it has to be adapted to cultures, to local cultures, and not get just in conflictual situation.
Thank you for a very accurate answer. Arab and Hans, please.
Well, I humbly would like to disagree with you that the education system is not adapting. The education system is adapting very quickly. And also in reaction on your first contribution, you must go again to business schools. There is a very interesting initiative among business schools called 50+20. It's a major action where they focus very much on including in every element which is being taught in business schools education for sustainable development. These business schools have taken an important lead role in the higher education for sustainability initiative. So I don't agree with you that they are not changing. And that is also true at the lower levels. Everyone tries to do its best to contribute. But I would like to go back to the original question. And I would like to mention that in my view we have come a long way, both in relation to sustainable development and in relation to education. When Kofi Annan came in 1999 to us and said he wanted to have a strategy for the Millennium Summit 2000, no one was really thinking about it very clearly. And when you walked around in New York, they came to something like either eradication or alleviation of either hunger or poverty. And so I said, well, I can agree that maybe diplomats and politicians cannot come to compromises beyond this. But we are from a university, and universities do exist in order to understand complexity. So we should first look at what kind of problems are on the table. And we came at that time to about 28. 7 each for peace, for governance and security, environment and development. And we had state-of-the-art papers, and well, the Millennium Development Goals in fact came from this process. It was not as open as the present process. In fact, it was very difficult to get governments to agree on Millennium Development Goals anyway. And the most difficult was sustaining in the future. So Kofi told us that in the year before 2000, he was visited by 100 heads of state. And these 100 heads of state, none had mentioned either environment or sustainable development as a major problem. None. So we had to invent a strategy to get it into the Millennium Goals and in some way. And so John Ruggie decided to have Gallup involved, and we had a major Gallup poll interview campaign where I think 75 countries, 60,000 people were involved, or 60 countries, 75,000 people, something like that. You can find it in We the People's, the Millennium Report. And in all countries, they stated that environment or sustainable development among the people was the most important problem. Developed and developing countries both. This was the reason to have sustaining the future still in the Millennium Development Goals. Many countries were not happy with it, and they always dealt with it in a kind of secondary way. And in this sense, you can say that now after Rio, we are now working in 2015, not on development goals anymore, but on sustainable development goals. So we have come a long way. In fact, every element of these sustainable development goals reflects some sustainable development issue. And in this sense, education for sustainable development is in fact, in my view, present in every goal, in every. 4 is specifically on education. 4.7 is more specifically on ESD. And when the formulation can be a little bit more precise, it's even better. So I would like to support Japan very much when they try to do so. But it is there. And with regard to education, there was no major stakeholders group on education after Rio 92. In 92, everyone talked about education, but mostly educators were not in Rio. So we started a campaign about, from education to get education involved. So in 98 we had the UNESCO World Conference on Higher Education, a specific thematic debate on the issue. We had 2002, we had the Millennium, the UN Decade. And now education is really present. One last remark. The world is not governed from New York. So how precise should the targets and indicators be? That's a question. Because there is governance at the level of the UN to set the framework, what is important for everyone. But there are also national governments to implement these policies, and regional and local governments to really do the action, and we, the institutions, really executing the programs. So we have to really think more clearly about our roles, but the possibilities are there.
Thank you, Hans. There are so many questions I would like to pose many follow-up questions, but there's no time for that. And I will really ask you, there's a last question before I let other people participate in the discussion. And please be very short in your answer. And the third question is education enough to address sustainable development challenges? And these are urgent times demanding urgent measures. And education is, of course, crucial, but it takes time. And does it really take us away from current global power relations, institution structures, that those the changes that are needed there? Very shortly, please. And we start with Hinako, please.
Thank you. There are so many things I would like to mention to address this question, but I'm going to try to be brief. Japan has been taking numerous initiatives, but it's not sufficient yet, particularly in the area of insufficiency of human resources working on ESD. That's the first. And secondly, lack of systematic arrangement of education material focusing on ESD. And thirdly, insufficiency in terms of cooperation and networking amongst ESD-related organizations. So I think it is better to try to develop a new education material starting from the viewpoint of ESD and also capacity building. And we are preparing with these initiatives to make further cooperation and networking amongst relevant organizations. And with that, we would like to have an whole arrangement and organization having a true hub function, central hub function, connecting localities, communities, and communities, and so that ESD really penetrates to become a part of automatic gestures in every family and in daily life to become really effective. And Ministry of Environment has been trying to convince the government of Japan to allot enough budget to these initiatives. Different issues facing different countries, such as climate changes and biodiversity related issues, are not issues of individual countries. These are global issues facing all of the countries and the world as a whole. So I think through the participation of many countries from all over the world to this World Conference on ESD, I wish that Japanese government will be able to contribute to strengthen further the networking and cooperation amongst the many countries of Japan. And I would like to make this widespread all over the world. Thank you.
Can we go to Hans, please?
Well, education cannot do it alone. It's crucial. And Japan and Sweden, for instance, and Germany have very good policies. So I should, in fact, invite many countries to look at those examples. But it is important to involve the other stakeholders. And that is what we have in the regional centers of expertise. Only then it can be a success. And we can make, it's not just about the regions, because by internet, by social media, they can link to each other to create a global learning space. That's a multi-stakeholder global learning space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Arab, please. You can give him a hand, yes, if you want to.
Thank you. Obviously, education is necessary but not sufficient. And in order to be able to face the challenges related to sustainable development, it's extremely important that we integrate education in the concept of sustainable lifestyles. And that's where we need to be guided on that. And to come a little bit, and you allow me just to reply, but it's also a contribution to the question to Hans. There are changes everywhere. Universities are integrating programs exactly as you have green buildings in every city in the world, but it doesn't mean that you have enough to make green buildings in a country and that we are not changing yet. So we are very, very far from getting the critical mass in order to move to sustainable development. In this context, when it comes to education, let us see the process, how we have been handling. It's bottom up. We have been working a lot, for example, in the context of sustainable consumption and production in most of the countries, in regions, and then taking it up global to the highest level. And that's how we have been successful in getting the adoption of the 10-year framework of program on sustainable consumption and production. And I want to say here, it's the only operational program that has been adopted in Rio +20. Beside all the discussion there, you have a lot of, so there are two programs that are extremely important. I ask you to be involved in that, and they are very powerful in education. One is on consumer information, and the other one is on sustainable lifestyle education that we have just launched yesterday here. And this will contribute a lot to sustainable, to education for sustainable development.
Thank you, Albert. And Rosa, and short, please.
Education is not sufficient at all. Education should be a driver and should be base, but while countries and governments face and meet economical troubles, they are not thinking about so much about the environment, about style of life, and so on. And with this regard, I do believe that Rio also, it's not a centerpiece of the planet, Rio 20, and it takes probably another time, I hope not decade, to make sustainability, sustainable developments as driver for many countries on the planet. So economical life, other stakeholders, IFIs and so on, they should take this into consideration.
Thank you, Rosa. Let's give the panel a hand. And now it's time for participants to come into the discussion. And please, panelists, take notes, because I will allow 3 questions at a time. Please raise your... Yes, Indonesia is first, and then Kenya. And I cannot see in the back there. Zimbabwe. And we can take one more, and I cannot read that either, I'm sorry. Absolutely not, I cannot read that. Swaziland? There, but in the back there. Sorry? Okay, so we'll take, first was Indonesia, please.
Okay.
And can I ask you, even though, well, time is short, so please be a bit short. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Nur. I'm from Indonesia. I have 2 questions in this for the panelists. One is, we know that the ESD is not just implemented in this formal school, because you know, the children are not just learning in the school, but they also learning in the community and the family. So how do you implement the ESD in the community? That is the first question. And the second question is for the Mrs. Hinako. Because you know, how the Ministry of Education and the Environmental the environment in Japan to develop the program that is really related to the ESD in order to be implemented nicely and take care by both the ministry. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kenya, I think, was next.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, mine is not to ask questions, but to make 1 or 2 suggestions. One suggestion is that the role of the ESD should not only be to empower people, to empower local communities, but also empower them to identify local challenges. And to emphasize that it is our responsibility, all of us, not necessarily the government or certain institutions. The other thing which I loved, and I want to also strengthen it, there's a case for us to document lessons learned, whether through disasters or otherwise. Because madam, if we talk about institutional memory, then there's a case for us to document for the posterity whatever has happened, so that it is easy to address problems as they arise. The other issue is, as we talk about responsible consumption, we should also talk about responsible disposal, because I think both of them are cousins. And the other one, finally, as we talk about times and circumstances that are changing fast, Madam Chair, it is important to review the curricula not after some years, as is the case in most countries, but to make it continuous to address this concern. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next was, I see you, Mexico, later. Where did we have the third? Zimbabwe, I think, yes. Zimbabwe now. Please.
Thank you. I just wanted to make two comments. The first one relates to early child development. In fact, this is very, very important to focus our minds on the young ones. So what suggestions would the panelists have in terms of funding for such programs? Secondly, the other panelists talked about changing, the game changer. Again, this is very exciting when you talk about changing. It means that we are all changing. We came here yesterday or day before yesterday, and now we are 2 or 3 days older because we are changing. So if we do not want to change, change will change us. So it's important for UNESCO, one of the days, to organize a very important seminar for us to talk about changes, because changes are here and we are changing every now and again. Thank you.
Thank you. And there was another question here first, and then I will take 4 new. But first we'll let the panelists in.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Moderator. I'm Dennis Signolo from Education International.
Yes.
Is education a game changer for ESD? I would say inclusive quality education for all is a game changer. So teachers must be at the center of that process, because they are change agents. They deal with young people every day, and our schools are found in every corner of the country. So if we are to make a difference, we have to target schools and we have to target young people. We have to empower teachers to be able to support these young people to change the world, because they are the custodians of our planet now and in the future. The last point I would like to raise is the importance of education and making sure that it is in the final post-2015 development framework. It will boil down to what happens in New York. We are almost certain that there will be an education goal, but we are not certain that it will be robust and comprehensive enough to include essential elements such as ESD. So how will we make that happen? We know that within the UN process, UN member states will be going into negotiations beginning early next year. So we know that it is our high commissions in New York which will do the negotiations. So what will make the difference is the work we will do after this conference as ministries of education and various ministries dealing with environmental issues, ESD issues. How are we going to connect with our foreign affairs ministries? How are we going to feed into the negotiation process and support ESD in the new development framework? That's what will make the difference. So all I'm saying in short is all is good. What we have done is good. What we've said is good. But the work is only to be done after the conference for us to make a difference. That's the most important thing.
Yes, thank you. So please, panelists who want to, you're welcome, who want to start? Yes, please.
Okay.
And keep it short, please.
No, okay,
Sorry.
very well. For the first one from Indonesia, I'm very happy to see this question there, mainly that our first report on education for sustainable consumption was done for Indonesia. It was a very interesting report, thanks to the involvement and commitment of the government. What is important that to make the ESD really in community, not just out of school, is to make sure that the media and the system in the country is really organized towards that, because you need absolutely to give the information beside and outside the school to make sure that your consumer, your citizen do have the elements to understand what goes around them when they go to the market, to see, to decode what is behind the products, and to be also an active member in the society when it comes to waste management, energy efficiency, water efficiency, and so on. So school is just a starting, but doing it during life is important to do it in the community. For Kenya, you highlight we need to prepare them for challenges. If you allow me, I would say, and also to identify opportunities. I think opportunities are it's the positive side of it. Challenges are the negative side. So let us be positive and look for the opportunities there. For the last one, just in terms of New York and so on, it's important that the capitals do work together with New York, and there is a process that should be designed from here, and do not hesitate to use the civil society. In the backyard, they are doing excellent work to educate and to brief the diplomats in New York to change their mind, to take good position. And I have no doubt that ESD will remain in the goals.
Thank you, Arab. Hans?
Well, I already mentioned for Indonesia the case of Gajah Mada, of Yogyakarta. In fact, as far as I know, the Indonesian government has included the community level in its ESD policy. And so this is a good idea which could be spread over all the different countries. Indeed, the community level is important both to empower for local challenges as well as to recognize local opportunities. And that's for Kenya. And I think it will be very important to really go into the regional and local level. That's why every time you have to stress that environment, development, society are different from place to place. And we have no one-fit-all solutions. And that's, I think, an important one. Therefore, also, it's important that there is a bottom-up pressure all the time. The way I have suggested how the development of the policy making on sustainable development and education has gone, has always been through bottom-up pressure. And we have to keep it really in place.
Thank you, Hans. Rosa?
I want to respond to the question about the early childhood and resources to finance. I want to compare uncomparable things, Japan and my country. In Japan, as I've learned, 80% of children, they go to the kindergartens and mostly to the private kindergartens. In Soviet days, we used to have 30% of children covered by kindergartens, and today it's about 20%, and most of them are still public kindergartens. I have a foundation, and the main core of my foundation is early childhood. And this summer we have organized in the pastures 35 mobile kindergartens. And it's up to the responsibility of those pasture committees, people who want to graze their animals there. And next summer, I want to open about 100 of them. So we go after children, and we find those stakeholders, parents, these pasture committees who should be involved in that. So, I mean, private kindergartens, this is a new avenues to aim children into the kindergartens. This is really a very difficult task to find resources in the countries with high birth rate, but we should do. We do believe and we do convince that early childhood is crucial for the development of children.
Thank you, Rosa. Ms. Hinako?
ご質問ありがとうございます。
Thank you very much for the questions. In Japan, first of all, there are objectives which are compelling. Climate change and disaster risk reduction and the biodiversity, those are global scale issues. We must address these issues. These are clearly our goals. So in terms of the cooperation between the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Education, Science, Culture and Sports, we discuss between the two ministries based on these necessities. And as I said earlier, we have a lot of experiences here in Japan in terms of pollution and natural disasters. We have overcome all of them by cooperating through our cooperation with local communities. So we have wisdom, lessons learned from those experiences. And also the schools are really related and to the local governments. So we do not cooperate ministries at the ministerial and the local government levels as well. We do not cooperate for the sake of cooperation. We cooperate with each other when we have to cooperate in order to address necessities. And based on those discussions, based on the actual needs, we exchange views and ideas between different ministries, government agencies, and we make our decisions based on what we must do. Thank you very much.
Now, I'm sorry for all country representatives. There is no more time now, so we will allow 3 more questions from the back. For those without signs, I'm sorry. 3 more questions from the back. That is what we will have time to. So please give the microphone to the first 3 who raised their hands from the back. There were questions before, at least. If it's not, yes? Over there, please. Yes, okay.
Gracias.
Yes, thank you, moderator. My question for the distinguished panel on the part of the delegation of Mexico, and especially on the part of the National Syndic Union for Educational Workers, which brings together over 1.5 million educational workers, deals with 2 issues. First of all, when speaking about these new rules for ESD, what can UNESCO do for countries like our own, and what can teachers do, teachers and education workers do through a program that we have, which is called the Green Plan and which focuses on environmental issues? What can we do for UNESCO? You have to bear in mind that Mexico has a border that is 3,000 kilometers long with the United States, and this leads us to have to take certain education, and this actually directs many of our educational choices in Mexico. Thank you.
No more questions from here. Are there any questions? Yes?
Hello. I was never given a chance, although you called out our country.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then of course you can.
Okay, thank you. I'm Dr. Utete Masango from Zimbabwe.
Yes.
And
Sorry.
Mine is a contribution, not a question. I think what we are missing really is, first of all, to look at the enablers, because we have not looked at the enablers. And what we have done as Zimbabwe is that we came up with a national policy. And the national policy that we have in Zimbabwe is called Zimbabwe Agenda for Sustainable and Socio-Economic Development. And this policy is underpinned by 4 pillars. And the 4 pillars are food security and nutrition, social services and poverty eradication, infrastructure, and value addition. And over and above that, we had then to look at the education system and say, where does the education system come in this policy? And there is also a commission of inquiry on education and training that was carried out. And we are currently reviewing the curriculum to say, how do we bring in these issues that we are discussing here, starting from early childhood right up to tertiary education. And we find everyone is involved. All the government structures are involved. Industry is involved. The community is involved. And they have a say in what the type of education that we should come up with, which is what we are talking about in terms of education for sustainable development. And we find this working because the economic situation is also taken into account. I thank you.
Thank you. And one question from the back, and then let the panel answer, please. Please give the microphone there. Oh, thank you.
Kia ora tēnā koe. My name is Tina Ngata. I'm speaking to you from New Zealand, and I represent my tribe Ngāti Porou and Tuananga o Aotearoa. I have just noted in the last few days that there has been lamentably quite a dearth in acknowledgement for Indigenous values and Indigenous practices in relation to sustainable development. I think if you scratch the surface of sustainable development, you'll see that much of it aligns very closely to Indigenous values and Indigenous practices that are already being practiced today. I was wondering from the board where they see Indigenous values and Indigenous practices and the struggle for improved Indigenous rights in relation to sustainable development education. I would also like to acknowledge and point out that there is also already very successful sustainable development education being practiced by Indigenous communities around the world, and that and would implore that member states and the United Nations continue to acknowledge and support and maintain the strengths that Indigenous communities have in sustainable development and the education around it. I would also like to point out that many of our Indigenous communities are also under assault from a number of other issues that relate to our ability to be able to articulate and respond to sustainable development problems. And so that the engagement with Indigenous communities extends to the wider related issues of language, of culture and of well-being. Kia ora.
Thank you. Panelists? You want to start, Arab, please?
Okay, very, very quickly. I'm not going to respond on behalf of UNESCO. I hope the UNESCO colleagues will reply to the Mexicans directly. I'm sure it will be very positive. But what I can tell you, at least from the UNEP perspective, there is this global university partnership on education. I think it's extremely important that we see how we connect together and work on this. And at the same time, under the program we have on sustainable lifestyle and education, there are large opportunities to see how we can work with associations like yours and the program Musante Verde. For the indigenous people, and I will add also local cultures, we have learned to see how to work with them progressively, and they became an extremely important partner for us in the 10-year framework of Program on Sustainable Consumption and Production, and we do recognize them and value their input. Simply what you have to see how to work together. They are one of the 9 major groups, and we have just been invited for a meeting we have in Rome next month. So we are there, but not as much as you expect. I'm sorry for that.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to respond?
Well, maybe I should say.
他のパネリストの方いかがでしょうか。はい。それではメキシコと
and the UNESCO, that in fact the different interest groups, stakeholder groups are represented in UNESCO, and as far as I have been walking around there is a lot of exchange of information, and I think that when there is any shortcoming there, you should use this opportunity to meet the UNESCO people and to address that. And I think both of you can learn from each other. For Zimbabwe, I had in fact a major question, and that is, who are the enablers? we should look better at the enablers. But who are the enablers? Because the policy sounds quite reasonable. And for New Zealand, that is exactly the reason why we every time indicate that the situation is different for each local and regional community. And that therefore we should bring ESD to the local and regional level. It's not just a general global policy. And the regional centers of expertise are exactly trying to do this. And I would like to invite you to contact the people at UNU IAS to see how for New Zealand you can create such an RCE, in particular looking at your own situation.
Thank you, Hans. Well, time is running out. I want to thank everybody, all the participants for participating, and I'm very sorry for the many of you who wanted us to ask questions, but that I said no to. And of course, special thanks to Japan, to UNESCO, to Nagoya for organizing the conference, and a special thanks to our panelists. Please, a big hand.